There is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215. It's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom. Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Folks, how are you today? I'll put the camera on briefly while I'm floating around. Hope you're having a great one. Sorry we missed out on our Magna Carta Learning Centre last night. Having a few connection issues where I'm staying. It's just a little bit light on in service, I guess is the best way of describing that. So my apologies for that. Of course, I'm in Victoria at the moment. We're going to be doing a big show tomorrow night at Darren Bergwerf's My Place in Frankston, and that is a ticketed show, so I'm not sure that there are too many tickets left for that one. You may not be able to get to that, but certainly Friday night at My Place, we're going to do it all again. It's going to be a big night. In fact, rather than a Friday free-for-all, it's going to be My Place at your place, because we're going to bring the Frankston My Place to your place. It's going to be quite exciting Friday night. Really looking forward to it. I'd just like to touch base with some of the folks that I've met since I've arrived in Victoria. The reception I've received has been overwhelming. I can't thank you enough to the people who've come to the shows, the people who've met me in the street, the people who've recognised my voice while I'm buying something in a shop. I am staggered. I'm humbled by your thoughts, your comments, and Fitz would be too if he got to hear them. So I will introduce him right now. Good morning to my very good mate, Fitzroy Sterling. Fitz, I just want to let you know that you and I are getting many compliments from people all over the place, but in Victoria especially, for the work that we're doing here in the Magna Carta Learning Centre. I know that I'm heavily shadow banned on YouTube and other channels. So I really have no indication of how many people watch this show, no true indication of how many people are getting this message. But if walking into shops, walking into places where I've been all over the southern part of Melbourne, over the northern part of Melbourne over the last couple of days, when people come up and talk to me and shake my hand, you and your name is invariably something that comes out of their lips, in the next sentence or two. So I just want you to know, mate, that the people in Victoria particularly are very hooked into what we're teaching and are very appreciative of you particularly for the work that you're putting into all of this. So just want to say thank you for that, mate, and let the people know that I am telling you these things.
Thanks, Carl. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it's a bit impromptu, so everyone who got the notification and you're on, welcome. So just wanted to say a quick hi to everyone in the Gippsland, East Gippsland area. I was there on the weekend. So if you're listening from there, quick hi to you. Everyone else who's saying hi in the chat, hi back. Yes, I did just want to quickly say that sometimes, every so often, I get people contacting me. And the one consistent thing that I keep hearing is that there's some kind of spiritual evolution happening inside them. Like it feels like there's a growth in a real deeper place. So everyone who's having that experience, understand that that's exactly why we do what we do. This is to come from a much deeper place than just from the surface. This is a life-transforming experience as to what we're doing here. So anyone who's having that experience, thank you for giving us that feedback, because it's much appreciated.
Yes, it goes to show that we're having a little bit of an impact, and certainly that's the feedback that I'm getting from the shows that I'm doing that aren't Magna Carta based, but a lot of people obviously watch the Magna Carta stuff as well. I'd also like to shout out this morning to River Table, who I'm not sure if you're aware who he is, Fitz, but River Table is a member of the Freedom Movement who is undergoing a few problems at the moment with the law, particularly in Canberra. A pretty pathetic little charge, but River Table is quite concerned and upset about it. He has to go back to court on November the 3rd for that, and he's very very nervous about getting anything on his record or anything like that. There is no serious charge about it. He was just one of the blokes who was filming people in Canberra, and it's just what they're doing. So if you happen to see or follow River Table on YouTube, then give him a bit of support, folks. He needs it at the moment. He's feeling a bit down. and we're doing what we can to help him. I believe that Spiros is involved now, going to try and help him a little bit if he can. And I've had a few words with a couple of our common law folks who like to go into courts and stir things up a bit. So we might be able to see if we can get him a little bit of help that way to alleviate, well, some of the stress that he's feeling at the moment. But shout out to River, and folks, if you follow him or if you don't, go and check him out on YouTube, River Table. He puts out some good content, and he's a good young man, well worth supporting. All right, Fitz, I think that's about all the housekeeping I've got to do. We should get into the lesson for today. Hello to everybody in the chat. I won't be able to follow the chat too much today because I'm pushing buttons and floating around. So hello to everybody who's already in there, and we will get stuck into it, Fitz.
Yeah, so just wanted to just give a bit of a lead into today. Anyone who saw Carl's live with Will Keat the other day, this is a follow-on for giving more depth to that. It's a really critical viewing. This is like foundational knowledge that everyone needs to have. So if you haven't seen it, go back into None 2K and you'll see the name is Will Keat. As soon as you see that, you need to go click on it and watch it very intently. Watch it over and over again and take notes, guys, because if you're seriously about expanding your consciousness, understanding how your conscience and the actual constitution are linked in a way that is there for you to actually grow and expand in your knowledge and acceptance of truth and that spiritual enlightenment you're seeking. That's beautifully explained in there, and that's the only reason why we do what we do. So like I said, if you're listening to this now or even later, you need to go back and find that video. That's essential viewing for every single member that's listening now and will in the future. Because if you can't understand that knowledge, then you're really going to struggle with knowing the difference between truth and fiction. And unfortunately, we're surrounded by fiction, which most people believe and accept as truth. So I just wanted to give that as our leeway as to what we're going to go into today, because that's the basis of everything.
Yep, beautiful. I've just cut my camera feed because the audio is a little scratchy at my end, so I'm hopeful not to put too much of a drain on the feed. So final good mornings. Hello, Sudsy. Hello, Eve. G'day, Doug, Sunflower, Aurora. Great to see you guys floating in at the moment. And let's, without further ado, get stuck into it, Fitz. You want the PowerPoint up first?
Yes, please. That'd be wonderful.
All right, let's bring that up.
So I'm just hearing someone saying no sound. Can everybody
really?
else who's in the chat let us know if there is sound or not? That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, before we continue. A little message up.
Got
Let me
sound,
have a
all
look
right.
at my
No, that's you saying got sound.
Yep. Sounds
good.
good. Sounds
all right,
good.
Fantastic.
Bloody
Thanks,
great.
guys.
All right. As long as we're happy about that, we're all good. Gee, no, okay, that was interesting. What have I removed there?
All right.
Okay.
A lot of people telling us that
Might
sounds
have to-
good. So thanks again, guys. It's good to have that
All right.
confirmation.
Let's get stuck into it then. I'll just try and blow my screen up a little bit so I can see what I'm doing.
Just want to, if you can read that title, it says Breaking the Control Matrix Using the Common Law Principles Enshrined in Magna Carta 1215. So we're going to take a really deep look at how that control matrix works. A lot of people talk about this, but they truly don't understand it. So we're going to start unpacking it and showing you specifics of what that actually is.
All right. We'll get into the causal factors.
We got
Without
nothing on
recognition.
the screen. Hang on a sec, Carl. We've got nothing coming up on the screen. Yep. So just before we read it, let's just see if we can
hang on a second then. Let me
uncover the mystery
back.
as to why we've got a black screen.
Yeah. Just let me remove stop the screen share, start the screen share. Again.
Now we're hearing no sound again. Someone saying got sound, others saying no sound. I've been hearing that Melbourne's being slammed.
Have you got pictures now?
Something's looking like it's trying to get on. Like I can see a little circular pattern going. Here we go. We're in. All right, we're back on deck. I just want to say, if you're in Melbourne, can you let us know if you've been having internet problems? Because I'm hearing that that's a real big issue at the moment. So I'd love to know if that's...
Certainly, I'm in Melbourne and I'm having real internet issues. and we've been getting them for the last 2 or 3 days. So, yeah, significant ones.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is the causal factor. So everyone knows what the problem is. That's really easy. They're not hard to identify. That's the point. They want you to know the problems. But if you don't understand the causal factors, the problems mean nothing, and you'll just stay stuck in that looking at the leaves of the tree and why they're all dying. But you won't understand what's actually connecting it all together. So that's what we're going to look at now.
All right. Without recognition and acknowledgement of the causal factors that are the source of self-inflicted suffering, one cannot liberate themselves from the invisible prison of social control as prescribed by domination control hierarchy structures.
Yeah, so that pretty much says it all. Like most people have heard these words, but they don't actually know what it looks like because they can't see it. They've come to accept so many truths that are not truths. And this is about showing people like where all the little hidden nooks and crannies are that they've shoved their contradictions and their lies into. And that's for every single one of us. No one gets out of this free. So strap in, guys, because it's going to be a lot of deep inner reflection that's coming. So if you have a look at this, we've been taught problem, reaction, solution, which means slavery. That's the controlled dialectic. Because the reason why they want you to think that's the way life happens is because if you could see it for what it really is, there'd be freedom. And we can't have that if we're running a slavery structure. So the real thing is not that the problems are things we want to avoid, but we need to understand what the causal factor is that's stimulating the problem. And there's only always one causal factor. It always comes down to one thing. It's like looking at a tree and then actually digging into the soil to see what's actually in that soil that's feeding the tree. That's what we never get to look at. Exactly. Because it's drawing its source of energy from the soil. So people are looking at the tree and the leaves and the branches, but they're not looking at the soil, what's underneath. And this is what the causal factor is. It's hidden from your sight. So this is about looking at what you cannot see. And that's where the whole game is won and lost, guys. So that's what we're going to do today.
That is a really interesting graphic that you've put together there. I just want you to go into that a little bit deeper if you can. Can you explain the slavery problem reaction?
Yep. So, yeah, I'd love to. So if you pick any problem that exists today, right? Like whatever, just choose one, right? Just pick it. So just randomly call one out that you know is a big one that you hear people talking about. Let's just pick one.
Rates, paying your rates.
Rightio. So the problem with that is, so the problem with that is what? Why would people complain about paying their rates?
Places financial burden or stress on them.
Yep. And so this is about their time, energy, and labor going into somewhere that they don't get a choice about. And what do they get in return for that? Right? What do they have control over that money that they actually pay every year or quarterly or however it is they have?
No, they get a receipt as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, but they don't get to
get a receipt.
Choose.
That's it.
Yeah, and they don't get to choose where their time and energy and labor has been directed. So something very personal and private that belongs to each and every one of us is our time, energy, and labor. And we are remunerated for that by money, right? So money ends up being a reflection of where we've put our time, energy, and labor that we can't get back again. That time and energy is not going to come back to us. We've lost that. So we want to be very careful with where that goes, right? But rates, what does that represent? It represents someone taking something off you, because if you don't hand it over, you are in fear of more loss. So better you have less loss than more, because what happens when you don't pay? There's more charges that come. And then there's all these enforcement systems that start leaning on top of you, right? So then you're just living in this place of more pain and suffering. So what do people do? They give it up because they want less pain and suffering. But the actual consistent thing here is pain and suffering. That's the motivator. So this is a world of hurt for people. So they're living in this space where their nervous system is constantly activated. They can't relax because they're always in fear of some harm being inflicted upon them or a loss. And so rates is symbolic of that taking structure where, and what do? We create a story around it. Well, that's what a good citizen does. I pay my rates. I'm a good citizen. We create that story. So to be voluntarily giving up your labor, time, and energy, so a violation of your integrity, makes you a good citizen. You think about that massive contradiction right there. And because it's too hard to swallow the truth, people create a story. And then they enforce that story in others. What's wrong with you? Why won't you do it? What do you think you're better than everyone else? That's the kind of stuff that starts getting thrown around. So if you have a problem with being violated, something's defective about you because you think you're special. Like these are those carefully considered mind tricks that are being fed from above, but the majority swallow and perpetuate and throw around amongst each other. They become each other's prison guards. And you can't see this, right? You don't see that prison, but it's all stimulated from within the community. So the best way to run a slavery system is to get the actual slaves to enforce it upon each other. And it's all done through mind tricks. And those, when you start creating those words, like what's wrong with you? This is what a good citizen does. Do you think you're special? Well, they're all shame-inducing words, so people cower under the fear of, not having to feel ashamed of actually standing up and questioning. This is really, really cleverly done. And so where does that lead you? It only leads you into one place, and that's submission. And so a slave will always submit, so we've got a population that just submits over and over again without fail. I'm hoping that sort of
moving
gives some
on.
clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes it much clearer for me at any rate.
So we're just going to stick on that first principle, not the others, because the first one's the only one I want to focus on today.
The principle of mentalism.
Yep. So natural law has 7 key elements to it, and we're just going to focus on the first one, and that's the principle of mentalism. So what that means is, before anything can become a reality, so anything that doesn't exist right now into the physical realm, for it to exist, first it must be thought up. So that's what's called the plane of causality. And so in order to create something into the physical world, like to bring it into being, it needs to be thought of in the mind first. And so if you're going to get people to behave in a particular way, you need to get into their mind and have them accept this as something they want or are willing to do. Doesn't matter how, whether it's under fear or not, that's irrelevant. As long as they accept it, it will now become a reality. And so everything that gets done to us starts in the mind. So if you think of the word mental, it's got ment in it. Remember we did a session, a show a few weeks back where we discussed all the words that have ment in it, because mental comes from the word ment, which means mind, which comes from mens, which means mind in Latin. And so the game is won and lost in the mind, because whatever you think first, that will stimulate the emotion that will trigger you to act. So these dark priest class that I've been talking about, they know this back to front. They are ancient psychologists who know that everything starts in the mind. The game is won and lost.
Yeah.
And so they've done a brilliant job of captivating people's minds and having them molded into a reality that they wish them to accept as a truth. And so this is why I'm really putting a lot of attention on this one today.
Okay, excellent. Moving on to our next slide, hierarchy. Oh God, now you're going to ask me to speak Latin again.
And it's a bit of Greek as well.
Hieros. Oh, that'd be Greek, wouldn't it? Hieros or hieros, and filled with divine equals filled with divine holy. So explain that before I get into Archon.
So if you think of the idea of someone or something as divine or holy, that's like above reproach. It's beyond the normal. It's beyond the everyday. There's something very special and unique about it, right? And what do priests and the priest class, attach to themselves? That they are filled with something that's greater than the everyday man. That they're like an intermediary between something, some higher source of intelligence and the average, everyday man. They have some special skill or some special divine ability. So that's that idea
So-
that gets put into our minds that some of these beings exist.
So hieros, being the higher part of hierarchy, is filled with divine and holy. Archon comes from ruler. So we get a ruler filled with divine, or a holy divine ruler. Is that what we're getting out of hierarchy?
Yeah. So, and as soon as you bring that idea into the people's minds that exists, then you need to fill that in with a physical body. Hence, where the priests come from. You know, so they've been saying this for eternity. You know, that they have this special knowledge that no one else has.
Yeah.
Like if you think about, let's go into some of those ancient civilizations that had the pyramids out, you know, in Central America, you know, where they had their blood ritual sacrifices. You know, they would understand about the solar eclipse, for example, where the rest of the population didn't. So they would stand up on top of that pyramid and they would, you know, make these proclamations that, you know, that this angry sun god is being chewed up, or you know, he's going to chew up the moon, or vice versa, and that means that we'll have no light. Everything's going to be dark, and there will be no crops.
Yep.
There'll be, you know, there'll be nothing to harvest. We're all going to starve to death. But if you give over all your power to me, I'll make it go away. And then, knowing that they know what's going to happen with the solar eclipse, it would go away, and the people are like, whoa,
Yeah.
You know, this is the kind of mind trick that's been happening to all of us. I'm just using that as a really obvious one because most people here won't get sucked in by that, right? Because we have that level of knowledge. But back at a certain time, those other ones didn't. Well, just like the people in those societies didn't have that knowledge then, there's a lot of knowledge that everyone doesn't have now about how they're playing different versions of those mind tricks. And they're done a lot more, they're done a lot more secretly and seductively. So this is the sort of, I'm just using that as a symbolic way to understand it.
Yeah, sure. All right, you've got a video, one of 4 that we're going to look at today. Do you want to intro this at all?
Yeah, so this is by a woman that I really have a high regard for. She's done a lot of work, inner work, as well as understanding the links between how social systems impact our inner life. The only thing she doesn't have is knowledge of Satanism and the whole structure that created it, right? She knows there's a domination structure in play, but what she doesn't know is there's an ulterior motive in the background. So the thing about psychologists and etc. is they're not actually fully informed of the big picture. They just get one compartment of it, and they're very good at that, right? And they'll explain it beautifully. So what I love about this is she doesn't know about Satanism, but she's telling you all the effects of what happens in the inner world when you're running under a satanic structure. And she does it really well. And she shows how people are divided and conquered. And people who come to her sessions, they wouldn't even make that connection. But when I watch this, I can see the connection between that and the satanic order that we've been living under for thousands of years, because it's a structure that's been in play for, you know, millennia. And so what they're missing is they're missing that link. And so today we're going to make that link.
All right, let's have a look.
In a hierarchy, you're really concerned with the use of power. You're either trying to get power over other people, or you're experiencing power as a power under. I need to sort of sabotage things from the back end because I can't do it directly. Okay. Systems like this tend not to feel safe to people. So when we're stuck in systems like this, or when we're really, maybe not stuck in, that might not be the best words, but like entrenched in the system, you're going to see a lot of, I'm going to get to this later, you're going to see a lot of shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, anger, and the needs that people have at this level have a lot to do with safety, predictability, structure, strategies that you see working well when a lot of this is active are routines and rules and policies, and knowing right from wrong becomes a strategy for safety. If I know the right way to do it, then I can just do that, and then I'm going to be safe in this world. And I also know who my people are and who the other people are. So this is a world in which we also have a lot of us versus them, We have both me versus you at the individual level, and then we have us versus them at the collective level. So in this realm, this kind of thinking, hierarchy, domination, control thinking, leads to disconnection and division. It's a fragmenting way of relating. It's designed to fragment self from other, us from them, and in doing so, we create enemies. And so what happens then is some human beings become a them, and become an other, and become an object, and then we have license to be violent towards them because they're no longer included in my sense of humanity. Is that making sense so far? Any questions about this piece or comments?
Right.
So that's got a lot in it, guys. So I really recommend people go back and watch that over and over again because there's lots of little parts in there. So if you think about what she spoke about, she said we have needs for safety, right? And to do that, we need to have some level of predictability or some predictable structure. And so how do we do that? We create routines, rules, and policies. Now think about, if you've looked at the other shows, what one of the expressions of moral relativism is. If you remember, it's rules and policies. So I'm trying to show you the link of where this has all come from. So if you're living in a system that dominates you, you need to have a place where you can feel safe. Now, who else uses rules and policies? Would it be the police? So I'm just trying to show you guys why they do what they do and why they will violate you. Because remember what she said? She said we give ourselves license to be violent towards one another. But we need a safe place, or what we believe is a safe place from which to launch that from. And so what are rules and policies, right? Who writes them? It's some self-elected ruler that will write those rules and policies. And that's why they follow orders, because they're just like, I don't want to think, you know what I mean? I just want to do and be safe with what I do. So this is really important to understand the link between moral relativism and what she just said. So this is what they won't tell you this because they don't know this stuff. So you see how the explanation was there's a right way to do something and a wrong way to do something. By whose definition? That's what we don't ask. Somebody's defining it. And when you write rules and policies, there is a being, a living man or woman, a sentient one, who is writing that. And there's a very specific reason why they are deciding what is right and what is wrong. The whole game is won and lost there. And then what you're getting are the prejudices of someone who believes themselves to be superior, and then everyone needs to accept it because they're enforced through fear and domination. And if you want to be one of those ones...
or you're getting...
I was just going to say...
in a governmental sense, you're getting what's better for the government than it is for the people.
Yes, and if you're one of those ones who wants to be safe, right, you jump on the side of the one who's doing the enforcing. And that's what the police are. They jump on the side that's doing the enforcing. Better happens to them than to me. Better I do the one who's giving out the, dishing it out than the one who's getting it. That's the kind of us and them thinking that happens here. And so we divide ourselves into gangs when we live under these hierarchy structures. And most people are not aware of that. So there's just constant gangs circulating everywhere, and we don't even see it. So there's little cults, operating off the same structure of dominating one another. So, that's like a way to try and get your needs for safety met. But who's really safe in that system? When there's an us and a them, that's a divide and conquer. So you can never really be safe in that system.
That's absolutely
so there's an illusion that gets created, right? And then you have to use violence to make sure that your version of safety will happen. And if someone else has to pay, so be it, because I'm right and they're wrong. This is the mind trick that's happening here. And everyone falls for right and wrong because they don't understand the difference between universally discoverable truth and someone's version of that, which is being shoved down your throat, which you are forced to accept. Pretty much like when we spoke about rates before. That's someone else's version of what they call truth that we're all being forced to accept. And we're so afraid to actually question it that we just capitulate and submit because the fear is too extreme. So we just don't want to keep living that life of fear. So better just get rid of it and pay it, And then because we've done it, we expect others to do it because why are they so special that they get away with it and we don't? So this is like the game. This is the game that gets played. This is the inner contradictions we accept, and we can never be free while we swallow these contradictions. And that's it's really important to understand why I keep calling these people ancient psychologists, because they understand this inside out. And if you don't understand that this is linked to natural law, this is all linked to natural law, because our emotions are linked to nature. They exist for us to be able to survive in nature because they motivate us to act. So if you look at the list of emotions that she put up, we're going to go and give some definition to those emotions that we all endure in this hierarchy structure.
Guilt would be one of those.
Yep. So yeah, go for it when you're ready, my friend.
The emotion stimulated when one acts out of alignment with conscience and violates their life values and or universal moral standards. Guilt can also be externally induced through the belief in external authority and acceptance of externally dictated standards, i.e. moral relativism.
So there's a universal way we can understand, when we've breached truth. But then if fear is present, we accept someone else's version of it. And then we feel guilty for not listening to what they've told us is right. But you first have to accept the belief there is an external authority greater than you in order to accept their personal preferences and biases as a truth. And the only one that happens...
Are you referring to God as an external entity there, or are we talking about government or extra, physical forces?
Well, it comes down to what kind of authority is being represented. So it depends how you define God, right? If you define God as a living being who believes in punishment and reward, then yes, because that's a fear domination structure. If you define God as universal consciousness and the underlying force that propels nature forward, well, that doesn't have a judgment. So it depends how you define it. You have to understand how you define it first. It's really clear to understand which one, from which position you're coming from. Because the underlying force that propels us to evolve doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't have what would you call it? A judgment on what something is for what it's done. But if you think of it as a being that has this idea of what is right and what is wrong, well, that's actually a very human idea. Because a supreme intelligent being, if you can't conceive anything more than it's just going to punish and reward you, well, then that's not my version of intelligence. That's just what everyday people do, and there's nothing special about that. So if you can't conceive past that, then in my opinion, you don't understand the meaning of intelligence, because intelligence, expands past those really rigid ideas. Because as soon as you accept there's a right and wrong, someone has to define it. But there's a difference between that and objective truth, because objective truth is provable and discoverable, whereas someone else's opinions are not.
Yep, true. Understand. Shame comes into it as well, an intensely painful feeling of humiliation that triggers beliefs that we are inherently defective, therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Shame is learning through self-loathing.
So if you remember in the past, I've spoken about police being, and I've shown you video of that, where they speak about these are deeply traumatized individuals as children. They have desperate needs for belonging, which they didn't have met as children, and approval, external approval. So they got taught that their value depends on what someone else thinks of them. And instead of being able to find out that for themselves, they hinge on other people's approval. So what do? They look for a surrogate family. That's why they take them to those police academies and they train them into their specific way of doing something. So now they adopt this new family, which gives them approval, acceptance, and a place to belong. But in order to do that, they need to give up their morals. And they're willing to do that because that's a massive motivator for them. And so that's who we get. And so these people are full of self-loathing, because in order to loathe yourself, you need to deny your needs. And once you deny your needs, you will deny them in others. That's why these police officers will violate you without question. And they'll do it on a dime, because they're deeply traumatized individuals who have no capacity to expand and grow their consciousness. Their parents did a brilliant job on them. And now it's not like I'm bagging the parents out. It's just that their parents didn't know any better themselves. So this is what happens when you live in a domination hierarchy structure. In your attempt to rear your children, as good people, you are using the very things The very mechanisms and strategies that your masters set up so they would do the absolute opposite. So they would be down in that base carnal instinct of man and using these very primitive ways of relating with one another by using force and fear, and tactics like making you feel like there's something the matter with you if you don't do what someone else wants, right? That's serious control structure. Shame is one of the most horrific ways to control people. Anyone who has any act of physical violence will always have a relationship with shame. And the more we keep inducing shame, the greater the violence that occurs. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And we speak language of shame all the time, and we're not even aware we're doing it.
Well, the language of shame has been particularly prevalent during the last 2 years of the jabby jab bullshit. So, that has been a narrative that they've worked in the media, and of course everybody in your family and anywhere else will have had to say about that as well.
Yeah. So that's on the external, like we can see that within, but then how does it work in our day-to-day experiences with one another? And this is where none of us get out of it without, unless we're willing to take a proper look. All of us are guilty of this, and we need to really start taking ownership of it, because how can you require something of someone else you yourself are incapable of doing? So you need to look into yourself to see when and where you are activating these same tactics. And if you can't identify it, then how are you going to expect it of others if you don't even know when you're doing it?
Yeah. Fear is another factor. Fear has a contracting effect on consciousness because it narrows the boundaries of truth, acceptance. Fear is a force which influences us to become closed to the truth. Fear is the force that shuts down our awareness.
Yeah, so this is I've obviously spoken about fear before. That's just to give a little bit more understanding as to why fear is the opposite of love, because love is your openness and willingness to accept truth. But when you're in fear, it does the opposite. It shuts you down from wanting to look at truth, because you're running into a place where you want to be safe. And to be safe, you need to deny truth. And we can use the easy one about the jabs, right? The majority of people didn't want to look at the truth, right? We can all recognize that, because they wanted to be safe. They understood in order for them to be safe, they had to deny the truth. It's not like they had that real open acknowledgement, consciously, subliminally, on a deeper level. They would have known that it's not safe to go and look into these places. There's going to be too much pain coming. So they'd rather avoid the pain than actually entertain their curiosity. That's the power of fear. It's massive. Like I said, ancient psychologists, they know how to run it beautifully, and they've been doing it, meticulously.
Anxiety is something that we hear a lot about in society today, and anxiety is neutral. How its purpose dictates the outcome. Anxiety that is expressed through passivity, i.e. the buildup of tension without movement, marks the impossibility of mastering a situation, therefore inhibiting one's innate capacity to attain self-love. Understanding anxiety as information pointing to critical life-serving needs being unmet opens up one's capacity for creative solutions that lead to self-love.
So this is the misunderstanding of emotions. Not many people understand that every single emotion has a purpose. So I'll hear this so often. It's like, I'm not afraid of anything. And every time I hear that, I think, oh my goodness, this is a disaster, right? If you don't understand that you have fear for a reason, that it's there for your safety and protection, and for you to actually do something with, so you can serve your life, then you can't actually come alive. Like, you have an emotion is there for a reason. You don't get to choose why they're there, but you get to actually try and understand why they're there and work with them instead of against them or deny them. Because as soon as you deny anything, you're controlled by it. It's that simple. Whether you agree with it or not, let's just see what happens in real life when you do. And so anxiety has an actual life-serving purpose. It's how it's appropriated that's the problem. Now, we don't get shown how to appropriate anxiety for the service of enriching our life. We get shown how to appropriate anxiety to destroy our lives, because that serves the purpose. It serves a domination control structure for anxiety to destroy our lives. And so we don't ever get shown how to use it for that purpose, right? So we don't get shown there's a mechanism by which we can actually sit with that anxiety and use it and allow it to point to us in the direction of where we want to go, and helping us uncover, where we don't want to go. Like there's really, really life-serving needs that it's pointing to. So if you're feeling anxiety, that's really clear that things like your needs for respect, your needs for cooperation, your needs for belonging, your needs for consideration, essential things like that, trust, they don't exist. That's the only reason you'd be feeling it. If you were having those needs met, you wouldn't be feeling anxiety. So if you understand how to link them to the needs that are in the service of your life, then you can go, okay, well, if they're not being met, let me come up with a strategy by how they can be met. Well, no one gets taught this.
Yeah.
And because we don't get taught it, we're taught to fear it and then take drugs to try and deal with it. As opposed to actually, no, it's a welcome thing. And we don't live in a structure that's actually there to support that. And that's on purpose. That's not an accident. And so a lot of these psychologists, right, they'll just treat the symptom, but they'll never go to the causal factor. And the causal factor is always structural. It's not the individual.
Yeah.
Because they want you to believe that there's something defective about you. So then you need to be treated and fixed. As opposed to if you do that, you'll never look at the structure, because the structure is what? It's the soil that the tree is sitting in. The roots of the tree are being fed by that soil. And that's the structure. And they don't want you to look at that, because that's the entire game. Runs and ends in that soil. And we're not allowed to look at it. So while we're preoccupied looking at each other, how bad and defective we are, right? Because that's why the whole divide and conquer game is won and lost there, is looking at each other. There's something wrong with each and every one of us. So we never look at the actual soil from which we're standing in.
Yeah.
And then if we don't do that, you'll never experience self-love, because when you use your capacity to be creative and come up with creative solutions, there's no greater form of self-love. When you go, wow, I'm really proud of myself how I came up with that. There's no better induction of self-induced love than when you are the creator of your own solutions, and how that benefits not only you, but everyone else that you're around. And we deny ourselves that every single day by believing there's something defective about us and others.
Absolutely. Let me move on. Satanism. From the Hebrew word hasatan, meaning one who is an adversary or one who opposes the true order of the universe. To oppose natural order is to act against the laws put in place by a higher form of intelligence than man, in order to rule over all life forms on this planet.
So we've gone over this, but this is really critical. I reckon I'm just going to need to keep going over it and over and showing new situations of how that's applied in day-to-day life. So that's why I put that up again, because we're about to see a video very soon of how this is all connected. So I'm just planting that seed as we lead into what we're going to see very soon.
Okay, so I think that's the next slide. I hit the wrong button.
Yep.
Moral. Let me just check. It is. Yep,
that's correct.
Moral relativism. Now we've seen this before. Man-made laws that contradict and conflict with the laws of nature. The dialectic where one action or behavior is right in one place and then wrong in another. And then the other side is policy, procedure, legal legislation, Roman canon law, admiralty law, bylaws, codes, and ordinances, the things we live by on a daily basis.
Exactly. So why I'm putting this up again is the video about to see shows you how the satanic system operates right under your nose, and we're all immersed in it. Because how many people go, I'm just doing my job, I'm just following policy, or I'm just following procedure, without really going, well, hang on a second, is what I'm doing, is that in the service of advancing the quality of other people's lives? How many people ask themselves that while they're doing it, right? But what's happened is that mind trick. The mind trick is, am I safe? This is what they're asking themselves. Am I safe if I stay within the boundaries of this policy? Am I safe if I'm following procedure? Am I safe if I follow the legal system? That's this is how your emotions are being manipulated for you to work against the very thing you seek. So you cannot have freedom while you follow the private prejudices of a self-elected superior. And that's what these terms really mean. So we need to understand what they truly mean.
Yep.
And they're in the service of living in opposition to the very things that create our life to be wonderful. They are in opposition to that. And that's the true nature of Satanism, is to go against the natural order of creation. And that's what these are that mind trick. Remember how we started? Yep, we started with the mentalism. We just got to get into the mind and have them believe it. That's it. And they'll do it. And this is how it's done. It's creating this fictional version of what people take on as an authority. But it's always goes against the natural order of that which we require to sustain life. And we will just do it willingly, without question, because our safety is hinged on it. And that's how it's done. It's to create the illusion that safety exists. Like nature is inherently indifferent. So safety is an illusion. Yet we have a creative capacity to resolve any issue that comes our way in the moment. But if we're living in fear of what's going to happen to us tomorrow and the day after, what we're going to lose, we're going to ignore that capacity and we're going to go and fall into policy, procedure, legislation, etc. That's what we're going to do. So it's another thing. It's about losing our touch with our divine capacity, our limitless capacity for imagination and co-creation. We need to remove that. If you take that away, then you have good slaves. And this entire structure is built on creating good slaves. And then they need to have their, what we call the house slaves running the system, and ensuring that it's enforced through fear. And that's what we're about to come up against now.
Yes. The house elves. I like the sound of that.
The house slaves, yep.
And this is how they do it.
Yep. These are your policy enforcers, guys. Remember, policy is what? It's Satanism. And you need someone to enforce that. And so, you hear at this protest, we've done this before, you serve us. Hello. No, you don't. They don't serve you. They serve their masters. And they're there to enforce their masters' prejudices, biases, proclivities, their whims on you every given moment of the day. That's what they're there for. And as you can see, it's about that duality, splitting the left and the right sides of your brain so they never actually come into alignment and meet in the middle. They're always right brain dominant, which is, blind belief, just believing what they're told, which is, and then the opposite side is where you just act without any care about what you're doing. As long as you believe you're safe, you will keep doing it. So my safety matters over anyone else's, so it's us or them. So that's why I was put all these things together. You need to see how the us and them is always in play, always. It never leaves. Yeah, and these people
100%.
are dug deep into that space. That's who they are. And that's what their identity is.
So now we've reached the point where that video we've been alluding to for the last few slides.
Yep. I hope it's building up, guys, because I really want you. What I've done is I've edited out as much as I could, just so you could hear the policeman speaking. It's really important that we pay attention to the words he says and why he never deviates off them. That's policy and procedure in action. That's him being safe.
Hang on a minute. I might have them in the wrong order here. Are we looking at the road stop one now? Then?
Yeah, the road stop edit. Yep, that one. So that one's critical, guys. If we can really hone in on what they're saying.
Vic Roads owns it, not me. You got a license?
It's not playing quite like I'd hoped. Try again.
Vic Roads owns it, not me. You got a license? I do have a license. Produce your license for me, please. Why do I need to? Because I've observed you drive a motor vehicle, a requirement. I'm not driving a motor vehicle, I'm travelling. I observed you drive a motor vehicle. You are now required to produce a license with your identification. If you're not, I will be arresting you until I confirm identity. Really? Do you understand that? No, I don't understand that. Are you going to produce a driver's license? We are... Okay, as I've observed you drive a motor vehicle, I'm now requiring you to supply me with a sample of your breath on this prescribed device to my satisfaction. Are you prepared to do that? Under Regina vs. Banner 19. As I stated to you, unless you produce a copy of your license, I will place you under arrest. Do you understand that? No, I don't understand that. No. Right, Article 9. Safety Act, you are driving a motor vehicle. You are required to produce a licence. Can you provide? Prepared? All right, can you provide? We've identified you. That's fine. Are you prepared to provide me with a sample of your breath in this prescribed device? Can you provide the investigation? Okay, so I must inform you that your licence may be disqualified for a period of 2 years if you fail to supply me with a sample of your breath. Are you prepared? I must inform you that. As I observe you drive a motor vehicle, I now require you to undergo a preliminary breath test on this prescribed device to my satisfaction. Are you prepared to provide the law, please? You haven't provided to a law. You are required to undergo a preliminary breath test on a prescribed device. You have refused to undergo the test as required. If you refuse to undergo the preliminary breath test, you may be charged with this offence and found guilty. You will be fined and imprisoned up to 18 months, and you will lose your licence up to 2 years. Do you understand that? We don't stand under your authority. Are you under your breath test? Yes or no answer. Provide the law. Yes or no answer. Observe you driving. I now require you to provide me with a sample of your oral fluid on this prescribed device to my satisfaction. Are you prepared to supply me with a sample? Provide the law, please. So, you have really required to undergo a preliminary oral fluid test on a prescribed device. If you have refused to undergo the test as required, if you refuse to undergo the preliminary oral fluid test, you may be charged with this offence, and if found guilty, you will lose your licence. Fine, we'll go to court. We'll go straight to court. That's not a problem. Yeah. So what is your reason for driving a motor vehicle that currently has no registration? I'm not driving. I'm travelling in private property. It's private property. Travelling in private property. Phone number at all? Not that I'm giving you. Have a nice night. You can't drive. I'm travelling in private property. You can't drive this vehicle. I can travel as wherever I want. If you continue to drive and you are intercepted, you'll be then completing further offences. That's fine. Do you understand that? It's fine. Okay. We don't stand under your authority, as I've stated. Who's we? I can't see. The living man. Mind, body and soul. Living man. We do not stand under your authority. Yeah. I'll be travelling home later. I'll be travelling home later. It's not a problem. At this stage, I am preventing you from driving this motor vehicle. You have no authority over us. If you drive the vehicle, as I've told you, you are not allowed to drive the vehicle. You will be committing further offending. That's fine. Just sort out your court case. I'll see you in court. No worries. All right. Have a nice night.
All right.
Right.
So
that was a very interesting set of responses that the policeman had.
So I'm going to break it down just in case most people missed what I want them to see. So let's just start with the first part, right? Imagine that you're just speaking to someone in the street and you try and explain something that's really important that they understand. And their response to you is, I don't understand. Would you use the exact same language verbatim to explain the same thing?
No.
Right. So this would have been a golden opportunity for this guy to say to them that same question. Is that how you speak to your children? Is that how you speak? Do you just keep repeating yourself over and over, even when they've told you they don't understand? And then point out to him the old classic that I think Einstein coined this phrase, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That would have been hilarious to see what they would have done, right? So you can see these people are entrenched in one specific language. Like if you think about what they say, they always use very specific words over and over. Doesn't matter how many times they're told they don't understand, they cannot deviate from it. Now, why do they not deviate from it? There's a reason why they don't, because they're programmed from day one that in order for them to instigate acts of violence and be protected, they must stay within the confines of this language. That's what they're taught from day one. They're not going to say it to them like that, right? They're not going to explicitly say those words, but they pick it up pretty subliminally, pretty quickly, that this is what they are allowed to do. If they don't want to get in trouble, they do it this specific way. So tell me that's not policy and procedure, right? Because there's nothing natural about anything that the guy was saying. He says, I observe you drive a motor vehicle. Why does he say it only that way? You are required to produce a driver's license. If not, I will be arresting you until identity is confirmed. They're very specific legalese terms, these, right? And then he sets it up with a yes or no answer, because he says, are you going to produce a driver's license? There's only two options in that answer. And both of those are trigger words for them to pounce on you. So no matter what you say, if it's yes or no, they're both trigger words, because no is to be belligerent and yes is to be accepting of the contract. And they're both different ways to actually accept the contract: belligerence or acceptance. So you're accepting through belligerence, or you're just accepting. It's brilliantly done. And his partner actually says it. He goes, again, guys, his partner actually says it's a yes or no answer, and he repeats it. So he's losing his patience, and he just wants him to say yes or no. So they're actually giving the game away over and over again. And these videos are really important. It's not about whether this guy was winning or losing. It's about seeing how it's done in real time. So we can understand how they're doing their policy procedure and how they're running that I'm safe as long as I do this. No one will pounce on me. And this guy, if you had to look at him, he was twitching like crazy. He was breathing really heavily. He was ready to jump like a lion on a gazelle in the prairie. He was just waiting for his green light, and he wasn't getting it. So he was just getting more and more frustrated, and he's starting to get more and more agitated. And then he's getting out his tools and his toys, as to find different ways to get him to agree. This is a real spiritual sickness in motion right here. And then they give him weapons, right? You take those weapons away and have that guy in the street, you'd be just looking at him going, do you need help? You know what I mean? But because they've got weapons, no one says that. So this is the real madness that's in play here. And it's only an us and them mentality that would breed this kind of behavior, because they belong to a special cult, right? They have their own language. They have their family that gives them, their sense of belonging, because they create their own language, the way they speak to each other, the way that they see themselves as being superior to everyone else. That's all drilled into them, and then they get their needs for approval, because they're always looking for external approval, because they were trained very young that that's important. If you want to feel like you're worth something, someone else needs to approve you, and that's that whole system. It's done very geniusly, So people who say that, the police, oh no, there's some good police, they don't understand the structure. They really don't. And this is really important to start looking at this. And that's no different to any government department, right? It's all the same, because it's not government. Because if anyone was listening to what you did with Will, they'd understand that government is just people who administrate the will of the people. That's all it is. But these guys are not. They are corporate policy enforcement agents, every single one of them, no matter what branch of fake government they work in. And that's why it's just to show that.
Let's move on to the next video from Yvette. Do you want to set this one up?
Yep. So she's just going to give it more depth to what we've been talking about, right? She's going to show what happens to the psychology of all of us when we believe these fake ideas that have no bearing on reality, and how that influences us and how that now us down. So it's really, really important to really pay attention, guys. So you can see how the structure, why they're ancient psychologists, right? This is really important to understand.
I can do things to them, and I can expect things of them that I wouldn't want somebody expecting of me. Or if they are North Koreans, or if they are Tea Partiers, or if they are crazy liberal progressives, I can suddenly start doing and saying things about them and to them that actually make me feel good. Self-righteousness is one of the most dangerous energies on this planet today. It is incredibly divisive. And it is a stage of what I would call community development that we have stalled out at and really need to step up our game and develop beyond.
So if you have a look at it,
that is.
I think we've lost you, Carl.
Okay, you start. There you go.
I wasn't sure if we lost you or you were just waiting for me to speak. I just wanted to say that when you listen to her, self-righteousness. Now, how do you get people to become self-righteous? You need to give them ideas that somebody's right and somebody's wrong. And that comes from a structure. Yeah. We're not inherently born with that. And how do you do that, right? You get them to believe certain ideas of superior and inferior. Now, remember how we went through the hierarchy structure earlier? You know, that creates the idea that there is a superior being. You know, as soon as you accept that, there's a win and lose system going. So this is, it's always in play. It's never, this is why I've been talking about this win and lose all the time, because they are temporary states. Once you win, you have to win again, because the one who's lost is going to try and win. And so you're on this power play, always back and forward, trying to dominate one another. The only way to win or lose is use domination tactics. And we're doing it to each other all the time. So we are acting out our slavery for our masters. That's why we get the karma. They understood this. But first they had to get into our minds and get us to believe the things that are not actually verifiable and discoverable, that they actually are truths. They had to do that first. And when you do that, you constantly have to maintain it. You cannot let it go, because if you let it go, the people will work it out eventually. So that pressure is always on us. Every aspect of our lives, we're getting the same messaging. You know, they dominated the whole structure. So you've got nowhere to go. So people just think that that's just what human behavior is. Oh, that's just what we're like. You know, they start accepting this as a truth. You know, what are you going to do? People are just selfish. That's what you'll hear. You know, and so we just got to, you know, protect ourselves. And it's always a structure. And so why are we doing this? It sounds like it's irrelevant, but it's not. It's all relevant to the 1215, because if you think about what the central tenet of 1215 is that you're going to be judged by the collective conscience of the community, by your actions. And conscience goes above all those inversions of reality. You know, that's why this is all connected. So this is why I was sort of putting this in. We need to see how the structure does it to us to understand why the 1215 is the way out of it. And if you watch the video that you did with Will, if people want to watch that, he explains that the Constitution is the capacity by which we test the validity of our ideas, and we're forced into a place where we look at all the contradictions we've swallowed as truths, and we are forced to challenge that and look into it deeply. And that's done through the trial by jury structure. You know, this is all really important. If that mechanism doesn't exist, we'll never will. We'll keep accepting these lies because there's nowhere to challenge it, and we're not forced into looking at it. And until societies look at all the contradictions they've swallowed, you know, there's no change forward. And so if we don't have a mechanism where which that can come to life, then we're stagnating. And that's why this is all connected, guys. If you're wondering what's this got to do with the 1215, it's all to do with our collective understanding of truth and how to access that and how to test it. And there has to be a place by which we go, and we're forced into a situation where we need to test it. And it's only in trial by jury. It's nowhere else.
Let's get into our final video. Learned helplessness. It's certainly an interesting title.
Yeah, this is brilliant, guys. This shows you why people come up with statements like, well, what are you going to do? That's just how life is. So this is a really good way to see how that actually happens.
Only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word.
I thought it was coming.
When you're done, I need...
It's good. It was going, Carl. It was actually playing.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
I'm not seeing it. That's the weird thing. Oh, play one more time.
Only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram...
Oh, God.
It was...
I think...
Only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word. When you're done, I need to see your hand raised. Oh, wait. Keep your hands up, please. Just do number one. Don't go on. Don't go on. This isn't meant to be difficult. Okay, put your hands down. Let's just go to number 2. Don't even worry about number 1. Go to number 2. Solve that one. Again, when you're done, I want to see your hands up. Everybody's hands down. We're going to go ahead and do number 3. For number 3, rearrange the letters, and as soon as you do, go ahead and put your hand up. Here's what you need to know. You were both given 2 different lists. This side of the room was given these 3 words. The left side of the room, here you go. They were given bat. What would the word be? The second one, they were given lemon. Brian, the word? Melon. They were easy. The trick here was both of you were given the third word, which was the same. The third word was cinerama, which was American. Your first 2 words on this side of my classroom were not solvable. They were impossible tasks. I'm sorry. I know, but here's what we did this for. I was able to induce something called learned helplessness in the left side of the room very easily within about 5 minutes. I want you to think about what happened to you, this left side of the room, when you saw the right side of the room raising their hands because they already had the task done. What happened to you during that time? Jory? You felt stupid? Okay. I felt rushed. Felt rushed? Joelle? I was even more confused. You were even more confused because they all got it and you were still struggling. Chelsea? Frustrated. What happened by the time you got to the third word? Because I'm here to tell you, this side of the room is not significantly more intelligent than this side of the room. That was a random assignment. So what happened to show the differences? Why did you have more of a difficult time with the third word, which was the exact same word? Brian?
My confidence was shot.
What you experienced was a term called learned helplessness. How many have heard of the term before? Let me see your hands. Learned helplessness is often used in the academic literature to mean what? Jory?
Basically, they fail once or can't do something one time, and then they apply that to everything in the future.
Wow.
So if you think about it, right,
that's an amazing experiment.
they both got the last word exactly the same, but once they fail twice, their whole, capacity to actually use the divine intelligence just shut off.
Yeah.
Now you can, hopefully you guys are starting to get it, why they do these policy procedure things on us, because they're made to just get us to crush our confidence in ourselves. That's the clever nature. This is really insidious work, right? So that legal system, people, when you go step into it and you say you're Christian and stuff like that, and then you go step in a legal system, it's designed to make sure you fail. And what we're going to see next is that in action in the real terms, in real life. But I did want to address the comment here. It says from Tanya LB, Article 61 was written, was for 25 barons and not for the wider population. Now, Tanya, I did actually say at the beginning that you really need to go watch that interview that Carl did with Will Keats before you start espousing these things, because there's a difference between knowledge and belief, and right now you're actually espousing a belief. So please go and actually invest your sovereignty into actually uncovering knowledge, and then let's just see what your next comment's going to be, all right? So this is a program state that most people fall the trap for. They come to accept things that they haven't really researched thoroughly as truths, and then they just start launching them. Now, until you're willing to do the work and really put in some effort, guys, then you're just espousing your beliefs, and that's part of the program state. So we're not here to just espouse beliefs here. We're actually here to learn. So it's called the Learning Center. So that's what it means. You sit there and you pay attention, and then see how it lands for you, and then go and do some research. Like, take it upon yourself to see, well, what's being said here. Is there value in it? But if you're just going to come in and espouse your beliefs from what you've come from and what you've accepted, well, that's not learning, right? That's you being right. And so you need to decide which one it's going to be. And what's the quality of your research, What were the resources? Where do they come from? What do you know about them? These are the things you need to understand. And so, Tanya, if you actually go and listen to the video, right, just wait until you listen to it. Pay attention, take notes, and then come back and see what you say. Alrighty? If it's still not working for you, then I'm more than happy to have that discussion with you. So back into the learned helplessness. This is a thread that I captured that really encapsulates how learned helplessness happens in real time, right? It's brilliant. So I'm sure you should be able to read that from there, Carl.
Absolutely. Magna Carta was dismissed in Australian Parliament. Don't try using it; you might end up in jail.
So right there, he's telling you, right there, failure. See what I mean? Right in the middle.
Yeah. Parliament cannot dismiss that which gives it a grant of authority. It's like saying a child can undo the DNA from the people that created it just because it says so. If you're truly interested in discerning fact from fiction, the resources are there for free to free you from well-constructed mental prisons. Go to vofhq.com and click on Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. I didn't realise there was an ad at the end of that for us. So, yeah.
So we can keep going.
Sorry about
that. How the learned helplessness actually gets people's beliefs into this place where they're willing to harm somebody else. So if we go to the next slide.
So this person then suggested, yes, they can. The Australian Parliament voted on dissolution of any recognition of the Magna Carta to prevent people from tax evasion, separation from the state government, and demanding equality and transparency. The Australian people voted in favour of the dissolution, signed into law, and in full effect, using it is contempt of court. This fellow's very confused. To understand just how far from the truth you are, you would need to first be able to define the difference between law and legislation, then define the Constitution. Okay, smart ass, will you be willing to take the heat from very angry men who will follow your advice and get burned? Or are you another sovereign citizen with absolutely no concept on how the legal and political process work? I think you're talking to a lawyer here. Instead of answering the question...
Just hold it for a sec, Carl. So look what he does there, right?
Yep.
He goes straight into attack. So, okay, smartass. So he's made a judgment, right, already. So this is really important to see how this works. So everything we've been going through today, this is it now unfolding in real time, right? He's made a judgment. Do you see what's happened? Right? He's using shame, right? Because that's a dismissive term. He's using shame. He's inducing shame because he's being challenged. His contradictions, the things he's swallowed, the lies are being challenged. He can't have that because he's in a fear state, right? He's saying if you come up against these people, they're more powerful than you. This is what you're going to get. And then you're going to lead all these other people astray. So this man is in fear, he's in fear of more. So this is learned helplessness. Here it is right there. And then what does he do? He swallows this word like sovereign citizen, like it's an actual term. This is somebody else's invention that he's taken on as a fact. Like you can see it just piece by piece. It's really important that we don't overlook these things. We look at it, see it in real time, how it's actually unfolding, and show it actually how it absorbs into people. And they take it on as a truth. And then they do what? They punish other people with their fears. And so that's why I wanted that one to be up there, just to really cut that up into pieces so you can see it in real time.
And your reply, instead of answering the question, you launch into attack. No investigation, just attack. Sounds like you're gripped by fear. The sovereign citizen statement is what the state programs into those who dare stand as a man. I'd love to hear how you define the meaning of sovereign and then citizen, if you truly understood what.
Probably have to go down a bit to see where that links up.
I might have to go down a bit. I'm trying to find the what. Instead of answering the question, you launch into take no investigation. It sounds like you're gripped by fear. Sovereign citizen statement is what the state programs into those who dare to stand as a man. I'd love to hear how you define the meaning of sovereign and citizen. If you truly understood what I've just written, you'd realise the two words are in contradiction to one another, which is a tactic the state uses to place you in a state of confusion and render you impotent. Perhaps trying to do some independent research away from government-crafted resources might help, I suppose.
So where's that?
FYI, I'm one of those angry fathers, except I choose to use my anger in the service of what I seek, as opposed to managing it as defined by the state. The same state that uses the combined power of its machinery to create docile, compliant slaves trained into learned helplessness.
So if you think about how many courses there are about anger management, that's not an accident, because anger is critical. That's a massive motivator that tells you that you are being violated, and they cannot have you listen to that. They need to think this, that get you to believe there's something wrong with you because you are angry. And the way they represent it is they represent anger and hostility and aggression as the same thing, and they're not. This is how they get you in a state of confusion. So you'll hear people going, "Oh, what's his problem? Oh, he's just always angry. You know, he's just an angry man." Yeah, angry guy. Like, you hear that? Like there's something bad or wrong about it. You see, so we're our own slave masters. We are working against our own emotions because they're there to free us, but we're making them like they're there to imprison us. And that's a very clever mind trick that's been done on us. That's why I started today with the mentalism. You know, you need to understand how it's all done in the mind, because once you get people believing certain ideas, it triggers certain emotions. And so if you believe there's something wrong with you because you have anger in you, then you're going to try and suppress it. And then you're going to try and suppress it in others. And this is the game is won and lost here, guys. Anger is a life-serving emotion. Until you understand that, you are going to be controlled by those who are telling you something wrong with you for having it. Because the opposite of anger is docility. And that's what they need. They need you docile. So if you don't use those feelings that you're endowed with to liberate yourself and actually liberate others, then you are a really good compliant slave. And that's all this entire system is built for. It's to make sure that you are confined within someone else's ideas that is self-elected superior. And then you will enforce that on others. So you will be the one who does it to others. And that will be your children. This is the thing, you know, most parents, they want to have children that are healthy, thriving, you know, confident, but they are actually enforcing things on them that are making sure that the opposite. And until we understand that, guys, you know, we're going to keep being our own worst enemies. So the people who get in the chat, for example, and they start espousing their opinions, right? That's a program state as well. You know, that's not knowledge. But these people, the ones who run the show, they have the knowledge. They just know how to appropriate it to control you with it. And unless you are acting from knowledge, you are actually acting out that control. Because opinions are not 100%. Universal. They are your private prejudices, and they've been programmed into you guys. That's the really tragic part. And until you can see that, you're going to carry on just having fights with each other about what you believe, as opposed to attaching that which we can all discover and using that as our guiding light. That's the purpose of what we do while we do here.
Absolutely. Fitz, I reckon this is probably one of the most important lessons we've had so far. The demonstrations that you're able to show in this lesson to people will really bring home, I think, the key points in it. And I would recommend to everybody to watch this again at some stage, at least once, to try and get some idea of how you can act/react in different circumstances, and to be aware of their control tactics as they are put upon you, and develop strategies to work against that. I think it's a very important lesson today, mate.
So Tanya just came out and just did the denial thing. She said, "I'm not programmed by any means," right? Anything that you deny controls you, Tanya, right? If you can't look into the deep corners and think you're above being programmed, that's denial. We all fall for it, every single one of us. If we can't own up to our fragilities and our frailties, right, we're going to be controlled by them. And so the more you keep denying it, I'm afraid, the more you're going to be controlled by it. Truth isn't what you want to hear. It's just what is. So you can deny it from the more people you try and convince, it's just you trying to convince yourself. And it's not going to grow and evolve if you keep staying in that state.
You know what says, what happened to innocent before proven guilty? That changed in the court system many years ago, mate. They still tell you that that's the case, but it doesn't work that way in practice when you get in the door. So, difficult. Fitz, going to have to run. Been a great, like I say, a great lesson today. And thank you to everybody who's come in at a weird time to do it. Unfortunately, last night we had some connection issues. Next week, I'm going to be in Tasmania.
Yes. Have we got time to run through the what we've put through in the group, where we got the awareness campaign to pique people's interest, Have we got time to do that, or is that
Yeah,
going to
very
have to wait for
quickly.
next week?
Yeah, just quickly, mate. I've got other things, other places I need to be. So yeah, we can spend 5 minutes doing that. Go for it.
Okay, so what we've done in the group, guys, if you want to join the Telegram channel, we've actually put together like marketing campaigns, I guess, that are there to pique the general population's interest of where their pain points are. So it's not about talking about jabs and things like that. It's talking about things they live in their day-to-day life that we all experience. And they're all done to try and just trigger, people to look into the internal contradictions that they swallow as truths. And so we've got a few up, guys. So this is about trying to get that word out and expressing it. We've worked really hard on this, getting some feedback where we're seeing that there is something about that that's of value. So if you do want to help, start sharing the message out and getting into the minds of the people that, you're struggling to actually communicate with, here's one method that we've, put together. So you can actually do that. You just have to share it in your social networks. Just put it out there and let it land and leave it alone and just see what comes back. You don't have to argue the point. All you're doing is just putting some terrain out there for them to walk around it. And, if it does something wonderful, it doesn't, that's fine too. So we never shove the truth down people's throats. We just put it there for them to witness, and they decide what they do with it. And it also promotes the VOF HQ page as well. So I'm not sure if you've got access to those slides. We can quickly show them or not.
Are they under the end? I'm at the end of the slides, so no, mate.
Yeah, so it's not in the slides. Remember, I gave them to you separately as attachments.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
So they're just like there's. That's it. So if you can see that, guys, they're just questions that people, can ask themselves, and then why is this happening? So if you can see, we've got the heading as tax. Is it responsibility or theft? So it says, is it moral to take earnings and deny your choice on where it is best spent? Now, we spoke about that in the beginning when we talked about rates, right? Are tax dollars being spent with Australians in mind? Many people and services are at breaking point. And then it says, would you allocate tax dollars to return manufacturing to Australia? So where's the choice in when you're having your property taken from you, right? If the government can take your money without your consent, there's no limit to the additional tyranny it may practice upon you. So we're getting people to think, well, hang on a sec, is that true? Like, we're not telling them it's true, we're just getting them to think, right? And so then the tagline is Commonwealth law, which is what we're under, Magna Carta 1215, forbids taxation without consent. Now, we don't have that option here. And then it's just talks about, if you're discovered under the law, the people have the power to decide how they volunteer their earnings for the services they receive, because that's how it was meant to be. Would you be inspired to take action to make change? And then it goes to say, to deny the 1215 Magna Carta. So to this day, Magna Carta 1215 remains our rightful constitution. This is verified and proven. To understand more about your rights and freedoms, visit our free learning centre. And that's where VOF comes into it. And at the bottom says the power of, it's a bit small, it says the power of the people is greater than the people in power. So we've been doing things like that, guys. So these things you can easily share on any of your networks. You just need to join the Telegram chat group, and you just go into VOF HQ and click the Magna Carta tab, and you'll see the icon that takes you there. So there's that one. We did a couple on family court as well. So I'm not sure if you've got them too, Carl.
Yeah, it's up as far as I can see it.
Yep, there it is. So family court, heal or harm. Did you want to read this one this time?
Yeah, I'm going to have to blow it up a bit before I can see it.
The
current legal system weaponized. Is the current legal system weaponized to use children as the battleground for war? 2, would fear, hate, and suspicion be used as a means to turn mums and dads into mortal enemies? 3, does the current structure serve division or unity? 4, if the government can use the legal system to intrude upon that which is most precious and sacred, there is no limit to the level of trauma that can be unleashed.
And so same thing.
If you discovered that, Magna Carta 1215 is the remedy to heal and restore family bonds. If you discovered that under the law, The people have the power to decide on matters of equity and justice to preserve and uphold the sanctity of the family. Would you be inspired to take action, to make change? To this day, Magna Carta 1215 remains our rightful constitution. This is verified and proven. To understand more about your rights and freedoms, visit us at the Learning Centre.
So you'll see that last section will always be the same. That's consistent. So this is ways to try and get people to start looking into their lives and what could make them better. And so we've finished this last
Legit
one.
or a scam?
Yes,
is the child support structure flawed and open to abuse? Does the current setup make children the biggest losers? Is it equitable to be forced to pay child support when you are denied access to your children? What gives a magistrate the right to rule over you like a god, setting conditions that can erase you from your children's lives? If the government can use child support as a Trojan horse to escalate conflict within families, there is no end to the carnage it can unleash. Magna Carta 1215 ends division and reasserts cohesion.
Yeah, so guys, you can see what we're trying to do here. And if you want to join in, these things are done for you. All you need to do is share them. And they're available in the group, in the channel. And these are ways
and I
that we
will
can
put them up
sharing.
on the VOFHQ website too.
And so these are ways we can all work together, right? Because we've put a lot of effort into this. And so we can all work together and unify and start getting that message out in a way that's going to hit people in everyday society in ways that they suffer, because they suffer like this. So this one, I just want to talk about why we stay on topic in the channel, right? As to why we don't talk about problems, because if you don't understand the causal factor of the problem, you're just going to be exacerbating more trauma. And so you look like you've got two choices, right? You're the one who can see that there's problems and you can accept it. And then you've got those other people who refuse the problems. But look at the channel it leads you to. It leads you into the same place if you're just focused on the problems. That's why we don't focus on the problems, guys. We focus on the solution, because that's where you can actually use your power. When you're just held down by problems, you've got no power, because knowledge isn't power. It's the application of the knowledge, which is the power. And so that's why in the group, if you come in the group, you are coming to apply the knowledge, not to share the problems. So just wanted to make that clear, that that's what the group is about. We are very unique. It's like if you take a specialist course and you're going to learn gymnastics, for example, you don't bring your cooking utensils and start talking about that in gymnastics class. You're not going to master anything there. So that's exactly what the group's designed for, right? When you've come to be someone who's ready to activate the solution, then that's it's a safe space that will hold for you, so you can actually do that and you'll get the support in order to do it.
Absolutely. Mate, thank you very much again. Great show today. Really appreciate all the work that you put into it. And folks, Fitz puts a huge amount of work into preparing for these shows. I'm sure you're reaping the benefits of that, as I am. Thanks again, mate. And looking forward to next week. I'll be in Sydney next week when we do the show, hopefully with a much better internet connection. And hopefully on time, 7:30 next Monday night.
Yep. So hopefully everything goes well and the internet's working and we can see you at our regular time. At least we got to do it, guys. It wasn't ideal, but anyone who showed up today, thank you for joining in. Look forward to seeing you next week at our regular time.
Absolutely. Thanks, mate. Thanks for your involvement today.
You let
It's
one
my pleasure,
ant
guys.
stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!